Ever felt that sudden rush when a forbidden thing flashes before your eyes, like a bright notification buzzing, a chocolate bar glistening, or that buy now button pulsing? One moment you're scrolling, the next you're already halfway to the checkout, heart racing, mind whispering, just one more. That pull isn't magic. It's a hidden switch inside your brain, deciding whether you resist or give in. Most of us have been there. Studies show that 90% of people admit they've bought something they didn't need after a single ad, and the feeling of regret follows the same pattern every time. Today, we'll peel back the science behind that pull, uncover why it feels so powerful, and hand you 3 proven tools you can start using right now. We'll explore the biology that fuels temptation, the psychological triggers that amplify it, and the practical steps to stay in control. By the end, you'll know exactly where that switch lives and how to flip it on your terms. First, let's dive into the biology of temptation. Imagine a quick animation of the brain lighting up. The star of the show is the dopamine reward system, a network that lights up every time we anticipate something pleasurable. This system, called the mesolimbic pathway, doesn't wait for the actual reward. It spikes the moment we imagine it. That's why the excitement of a new gadget or a sweet bite feels stronger than the actual taste once it's in our mouth. Our brain prefers the fast track to dopamine over the slower, more sustainable release that comes from delayed gratification. Now picture the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles decision-making and self-control, standing opposite the limbic system, the emotional engine that craves immediate pleasure. When you're well-rested and calm, the prefrontal cortex can keep the limbic system in check. But under stress, fatigue, or hunger, that control weakens and the limbic system wins the tug-of-war. A simple example: you're working late, eyes heavy, stomach growling, and a candy bar sits on your desk. The biological state amplifies the lure, making it feel almost impossible to say no. Next, let's examine the psychological triggers that turn a mild desire into an irresistible urge. Social proof, the "everyone else is doing it" vibe, fuels a fear of missing out. When you see friends posting about a limited time sale, your brain registers that as a cue to act now. Scarcity, the classic "only 2 left" message, tricks our survival instincts into thinking we must grab the opportunity before it disappears. Then there's emotional anchoring, using a purchase or a quick binge to mask feelings of stress, loneliness, or boredom. Those triggers combine, creating a perfect storm that makes the temptation feel like a life or death decision. Picture a shopper in a flash sale frenzy, heart pounding as the countdown timer ticks down. The immediacy of the offer, the rush of seeing others click "add to cart," the scarcity warning, and the underlying stress of a busy day all converge, sending a surge of dopamine that blinds rational thought. In essence, 4 core triggers dominate: immediacy, social proof, scarcity, and emotion. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to stepping back from the edge. If this is blowing your mind, hit that subscribe button, and let's keep exploring together. When you give in, the brain registers a reward spike, and that feeling of satisfaction can quickly become a mental shortcut. The limbic system says, "That felt good, let's do it again," while the prefrontal cortex, still groggy from the stress that primed the urge, struggles to file the experience as a warning rather than a win. The key is to interrupt that loop before it cements a habit. One powerful technique is the pause and label exercise. As soon as you notice the impulse, take a breath and mentally name the feeling you're experiencing. Is it boredom, anxiety, fatigue, or perhaps a lingering sense of inadequacy? By naming the emotion, you create a tiny gap between stimulus and response, a space where rational thought can sneak back in. Imagine you've just bought a pair of shoes you didn't need. Instead of scrolling through your bank app and feeling the sting of regret, you pause, place your hand on your chest, and say out loud, "I am feeling anxious because I think this purchase will make me feel accepted." That simple acknowledgement sends a signal to the prefrontal cortex that you are aware, and awareness is the first ingredient of change. From there, you can decide whether to keep the shoes, return them, or donate them, turning a reactive moment into a proactive choice. Another angle is to treat each lapse as a rehearsal for future success. Write down the scenario in a journal. What time of day? What environment? What emotional state, what cue triggered the act? When you map the pattern, you start to see recurring themes, perhaps late evenings after a long day, or scrolling through social media while feeling lonely. Recognizing the pattern lets you preempt it. The next time you find yourself in that same setting, you can deploy one of the earlier tools: delay, reward substitution, or environment redesign, knowing exactly where the pressure point lies. Let's talk about the concept of self-compassion, a term that often gets lost in the hustle of self-improvement. Instead of berating yourself with harsh inner criticism, imagine you're speaking to a close friend who just made a mistake. You would likely say, "It's okay, we all slip up. What can we learn from this?" Extending that kindness to yourself softens the threat response that the brain interprets as a personal failure, which in turn reduces the cortisol surge that fuels more impulsive behavior. By lowering the emotional stakes, you give your decision-making center more bandwidth to consider long-term goals. Now, beyond the immediate response, there's a broader strategy that builds resilience over weeks and months: identity alignment. When you start to see yourself as someone who acts with intention, the brain gradually rewires the reward pathways to favor actions that confirm that identity. Instead of saying, "I am trying not to binge watch," you might say, "I am a focused creator who uses my evenings for skill building." The subtle shift from a goal-oriented label to an identity-oriented one changes the internal narrative, making the temptation feel like an intrusion rather than a rewarding choice. To reinforce that identity, create visual reminders that sit in your peripheral vision. A sticky note on your laptop that reads, "I am a disciplined learner," or a phone wallpaper that features a mantra about mindful consumption. These cues act as gentle nudges, priming the prefrontal cortex each time you glance at them, and gradually weakening the pull of the limbic sirens. Let's also explore the power of habit stacking, a technique where you attach a new, desired behavior onto an existing routine. If you already brew a cup of coffee each morning, you could add a brief meditation or a gratitude list before you take the first sip. The existing habit provides the trigger, and the new behavior rides on that momentum. Over time, the brain learns to associate the coffee cue with a calmer, more purposeful action, reducing the likelihood that you'll reach for a sugary treat to wake up your senses. When it comes to larger life changes, think about the environment as a silent partner in your journey. If you keep junk food out of sight, the cue disappears, and the brain no longer receives the visual reminder that sparks craving. If you store your phone in another room during work blocks, the temptation to scroll vanishes. Even subtle alterations like switching off push notifications for shopping apps or setting your email client to a minimalist view can dramatically lower the number of micro-decisions that drain willpower. Now, let's address a common misconception. Willpower is not a finite resource that you either have or don't have. It's more accurate to view it as a muscle that strengthens with deliberate, consistent training.
Each time you successfully navigate a temptation, you reinforce the neural pathways that support self-control.
Conversely, each time you give in without reflection, those pathways stay dormant.
So, celebrate the small victories. When you resist that extra slice of cake, notice the quiet pride that bubbles up and let that feeling become part of your reward system.
You're essentially rewiring the brain to associate restraint with a positive internal payoff. At this point, you might wonder how to keep the momentum going when life throws curveballs like a stressful deadline or an unexpected social gathering. The answer lies in building a toolbox of fallback strategies. One effective method is the 3-question check. Before you act on a craving, ask yourself, 1. What am I feeling right now? 2. What is the long-term impact of this choice? 3. What alternative action could satisfy the underlying need? By running through these prompts, you force the brain to shift from autopilot to deliberate mode, buying yourself precious seconds to reassess. Consider also the role of accountability partners. Sharing your goals with a trusted friend, or even posting a weekly update in a supportive community, creates external pressure that can tip the scales when internal resolve wavers. The social aspect taps into our innate desire for connection and approval, turning the fear of judgment into a motivator for better choices. Now let's tie all these threads together. We've explored the neurochemistry that fuels temptation, the psychological levers that amplify it, concrete tactics to block its advance, and ways to transform setbacks into stepping stones. The overarching theme is simple: awareness, intentional design, and compassionate self-reflection are the trio that can shift the balance of power in your brain. By understanding the hidden switch that decides whether you resist or give in, you gain the ability to flip it in your favor.
Before we close, I'd love to hear from you.
Think back to a recent moment when you slipped into a temptation, what triggered it, and which of the strategies we discussed feels most doable for you right now.
Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's learn from each other's experiences.
If any part of this resonated, give the video a thumbs up so the algorithm knows to bring more deep dive content your way. Remember, the journey isn't about achieving perfect self-control overnight. It's about accumulating tiny, intentional choices that, over time, reshape the circuitry of desire. Each pause, each mindful label, each environment tweak is a brick in the foundation of a more resilient you. Keep stacking those bricks, stay curious, and watch how the power of temptation gradually shifts from a looming threat to a manageable signal you can choose to answer or ignore. Thanks for staying with me through this exploration.
If you found value in these insights, consider subscribing and ringing the notification bell so you won't miss future episodes where we unpack more hidden mechanisms of the mind.
Until next time, stay aware, stay kind to yourself, and keep steering your choices with intention.